What's this?
A local.
Always on the move. Oh, I see it. Oh, this is going to be easy.
Ewan McGregor carried the prequels. Is that too much to say? Okay, I get it. It was a collective effort, and if you know me, you know I'm actually quite fond of episodes 1 through 3. The relationship that was built between us midichlorians and Obi-Wan Kenobi is one of the most sacred, long-lasting impressions Star Wars has ever successfully managed. I mean, say what you will about the movies as movies, but there is no denying just how perfectly Obi-Wan was portrayed during the era of the Galactic Republic. From Phantom Menace to Revenge of the Sith, including the Clone Wars, this interpretation of arguably the second most iconic Jedi ever is what's kept so many of us so hopeful and resilient through these recent bumpy years. Personally, looking back on recent media, I think Rogue One is actually a top 5 Star Wars film, and The Mandalorian proved to be a worthy addition to the canon of the universe, but there has never been a single project since the Clone Wars Season 7 that has rightfully garnered this much investment from audiences and critics together. The Obi-Wan Kenobi series, both on name alone and weight, is Disney's most important creative venture since they acquired Marvel Studios just a handful of years ago, and for the next few moments, I'm going to express why I personally feel that this show is critically important to the longevity of the Star Wars fandom. So grab some blue milk, take a seat, and let's talk Kenobi. Okay, so what are the inherent stakes associated with this show? It's really as simple as this. If the series does great, the collective Star Wars IP will be far better off for it, and that is the best possible outcome, right? From quality of product to global audience engagement and a renewed sense of trust being reinstilled within the brand, Obi-Wan's success would go a long way to healing some of the damage that's been done to fans from a myriad of angles. Sequel trilogy aside, it feels like the overall attitude by higher-ups in the Star Wars umbrella towards the prequels movies has become more and more jaded, and clearly the sentiment between studio and audience has shifted in polar opposite directions. The attention is now focusing on salvaging the sequels universe, which naturally means anything related to the prequels that is received well by the audience will result in an important win for the IP. But what worries me so much about this series is whether or not the implied responsibility and importance of Obi-Wan's character has really penetrated deep within the show's storyboarding. Obi-Wan Kenobi is not just a beloved character, he is one of the centerpieces of the original, unfiltered and untampered vision of George Lucas. He is a pillar of the franchise's identity, and much like Luke Skywalker, Obi-Wan represents a time in Star Wars removed from the mainstream nerd culture dominance and big-budget superhero cinematic universes, neither of which are a bad thing. Obi-Wan comes from a time before Disney became the behemoth of a company it is today, a time before Star Wars expanded to so many different interpretations, a time chronologically before Marvel even kicked off the MCU with Iron Man, a time before Star Wars became what it is today, complicated. Yes, the prequels weren't loved by everyone, but even with their shortcomings, it was never a question about vision or intent. It was always just about execution. In many, many ways, I'd argue the prequel trilogy is a far more rich experience than the original 3 movies. And the depth of characters and worlds and environments all threaded together inside those 3 movies are what we, the fans, remember most. The era of the prequels embodies one of the last pulses of purity within the original universe that George created, and Obi-Wan's character has become so synonymous with that artistic expression because he helped carry the overwhelming majority of the original story. Removed from blockbuster trends and a need for setups/spin-offs, Obi-Wan's reintroduction into the current Star Wars meta highlights one of the last remaining links to a different time in storytelling, in cinematic universe building, and a different era in Star Wars as a medium. His very existence now requires the utmost care and dedication, and the authenticity of his persona must be preserved at all costs. This is non-negotiable. This alone makes Obi-Wan matter more than almost any movie or show we've gotten from Disney since Revenge of the Sith. With the expectations at dangerously high levels, it's safe to say this series can't afford to be anything other than a colossal home run swing. It cannot go down the route of Boba Fett, where the image and identity of the character is then called into question, and we end up leaving the show wishing that the original canvas of our protagonist was left untouched. For Obi-Wan Kenobi to succeed, there needs to be an attention to detail that surpasses every series we've seen so far. This begins in large part with the writing. Star Wars has been plagued with some truly head-scratching writing in the past, but we were willing to overlook those flaws because it wasn't a failure in character creation. Now, this has been an Achilles heel of Star Wars media as of late, but it doesn't have to stay that way, and Obi-Wan might be the perfect character to prove this point. One show that's excelled at understanding its characters narratively as well as how to evolve them cinematically is The Clone Wars. While the most justice was done to Anakin, Ahsoka, Maul, and the clones, Obi-Wan's arc is still pretty incredible, still impactful, and the hardships he faced made the climax of Revenge of the Sith all the more devastating for his journey. This isn't just a man who lost his association with his whole lifestyle. He lost Mandalore, he lost Satine, he lost his student and brother, he lost his fellow Jedi Knights, and much like Maul, he lost his sense of continuity in the world. The locus of Obi-Wan's identity was completely external to him, taking the forms of Qui-Gon and the Jedi Order. So when he loses both, he would naturally become a hollow, broken man. This is what needs to be explored heavily in Kenobi. Not his relationships with side characters, but his relationship with himself. It's only until he raises Luke and forms that bond that he finds a semblance of hope again. Kenobi was a good man, but a flawed teacher, and now is riddled with the unbearable trauma of an ego-shattering experience on the scale of like a biblical extinction. We are entering a point in Obi-Wan's psyche where paranoia, depression, anxiety, dissociation, and complex anger should be the crux of his emotional journey. I think it's vitally important that this show addresses these feelings not just in one episode, but in all of them. Interacting with Vader again could be an emotionally traumatizing experience, one that triggers his fight or flight instinct and causes him to spiral out of control emotionally, which is why the rumored matchup between the two is so freaking exciting. This isn't just a battle between two rivals 10 years apart. This is a fight of the wills, a fight of Obi-Wan and Anakin, more so than Obi-Wan and Vader. This is a traumatic clashing of broken identities, as both men are cracked through their core, having to rebuild themselves off of consequences they contributed to, and these consequences acting as a reminder of their failures from their time in the Order. And with both men being broken psychologically, physically, and emotionally, this fight should evoke not just sadness, but violence, trauma, pain. This is what good writing should highlight during this series, and personally, it's the one aspect I'm most worried about. Dialogue aside, I need to feel that with every episode we see, the writers understand the weight of the character they control and how they will move Obi-Wan's journey forward. The reason I'm putting so much emphasis into the writing is because I feel it's time for Star Wars to set a new bar for itself, something that hasn't really been done in live action since Rogue One. When looking at its counterpart in Marvel, every few years a new bar is being set, both cinematically and structurally. We started with the practicality of Iron Man, a spectacle unseen until then, and then used excellent character development and cinematic presentation to tell the next big story in movies like Avengers. Then all over again with deconstructing the psyche of a hero in Winter Soldier, following with the wonderfully threaded storylines into Civil War. Then Infinity War and Endgame, then No Way Home. You get the point. Cinematically, these movies got bigger and more impactful, as all acted as payoffs of years of character development, but they also highlighted a commitment to excellent writing, something Marvel storytellers don't get enough credit for. Star Wars, I feel, has been lacking in that systemic growth of storytelling and a new bar being set time and time again, one that honors the heroes of its universe and builds the world out correctly. Kenobi has a real opportunity to change the way so many people look back upon the prequel series, as well as giving longtime fans of Obi-Wan and Anakin a satisfying and important pit stop in their respective journeys. This all comes back to the writing, understanding the moments, and understanding themes and natural character growth, as well as obviously giving fans some incredible visual spectacles to feast upon for rewatch after rewatch. There are a dozen interactions I want to see in the Kenobi series. Things such as alternate angles of Order 66 as Anakin makes his way through the Jedi Temple, Obi-Wan having moments of quiet panic as he tries to keep himself mentally stable after the fall of the Order, Vader going on a rampage, wiping out cities and towns as a newly established Sith Lord, Vader potentially even visiting Padme's grave with a quiet hum of TIE fighters penetrating the background, Obi-Wan's resisting the urge to use his lightsaber in an effort effort to conceal his identity, but also because it represents grief. And of course, we want to see Obi-Wan completely outclassing the Inquisitors in lightsaber combat before his inevitable rematch with Vader. All of those visuals aside, I want this show more than ever to be an excellent story about Kenobi, one that can be deconstructed and dissected over and over again, much like how Logan was for the X-Men franchise. I've always wanted an R-rated old Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but I think a dark atmosphere can still be achieved if the right minds are behind the story. In the end, given some of the rumors about the show, including Hayden Christensen's rewatching of the Clone Wars and Rebels to prepare for his return, I do have a lot of faith in the series to not only do well, but give justice to the characters returning after all this time. It may sound cringe at times, but this show really does mean a lot to a lot of people, including the vast majority of kids, now adults, who grew up watching the prequels like myself. Asking someone to define Star Wars is a question that never gets the same answer twice. But when I look at Obi-Wan and think back to his time during the Galactic Republic, to me, that is the embodiment of Star Wars. That indescribable essence, that capturing of atmosphere and seriousness that I think has somewhat lacked lately in this world. Sure, this show could end up being just another average-rated TV show for the sake of a TV show, and maybe that is all Star Wars needs these days, but I think for the longevity of the fandom and the importance of the character's own legacy, this show needs to be treated 100 times more seriously than the sequel trilogy was, and much more seriously than Boba Fett was. In a lot of ways, it's almost more important that the die-hard fans are the target audience, because it will show that the studio understands what they're working with and who they're writing for, given everything this show needs to be. But above all else, it would let us as fans know that Star Wars does in fact care and understand one of their biggest characters they've ever had, and that's the risk of messing up this project. Outside of some redemption arcs for Luke thanks to the Mandalorian series, we've seen a lot of our favorite characters get put through the ringer within the past decade, and I don't know if I can emotionally reinvest myself in this universe if another pinnacle of my childhood falls flat on screen. Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't just another Star Wars show. It's a promise of legacy, and it needs to stick the landing. It has to stick the landing. That's all I got. I'm really excited to see how this show turns out, and yes, there will be a video on it once the series wraps up. I'd love to know your thoughts about the show or your expectations, so leave them in the comments below. Obi-Wan is such an important character to both our childhoods, but to the lore of Star Wars, and I just want this show to hit it out of the park. Check out the other Star Wars or MCU videos here on the channel if you'd like, and as always, thanks for watching.